Alright guys, we wanted to get you more involved in our weekly Breaking Point podcast. So starting next week, we're adding a new segment where we discuss topics and questions that you guys propose. To get involved, join our Discord and leave your thoughts in the podcast questions channel for a chance to be featured. Take care. Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and welcome to episode 16 of the Breaking Point podcast. Back again, once again here, joined by Austin, EasyMac O'Neill. No Lionman today, he'll be back in due course. I think he had a difficult time watching the matchups this weekend, but they were some banging matchups indeed. So many storylines to go through today. Roster changes going down, things changing with these teams individually. Every team, I'm pretty sure, is an interesting storyline right now, and we are going to dive into it today. First of all, wanted to give shout out to all of you guys watching at home, of course. Also, especially the Spotify listeners. You guys have been doing a wonderful job lately. The ratings and such coming in, wonderful stuff. Honestly, all the algorithm help that you guys give this podcast is greatly appreciated indeed. Keep up all of that good stuff. So let's get into things then. Absolutely phenomenal weekend, Austin. Of course, you guys have a 2-0 week. I'll just throw it over to you to touch on that real quick. How are you feeling? Of course, it wasn't the easiest time. We could get into that over the coming minutes. But you come up 2-0, pretty much a must 2-0 for you guys. So you just about get over the line.
Yeah, just made it over the line in both of them, I think. So it was an okay week, learning experiences all around. So I guess that's what you can take from it. And then going into this week, it's a big week, so a lot of prep work, a lot to get ready for. So it's gonna be an exciting weekend.
This league is so competitive, man. I mean, there's really been only one team that seems to be having an easier time as of late, and that's Toronto. We'll get into that. Pretty remarkable. But let's go through the teams. I guess, well, team by team. We'll start with the first matchups on the Thursday. That was the London Royal Ravens, firstly, up against the New York Subliners. And this was a really shocking, not necessarily shocking, but certainly surprising to me, because London, of course, haven't been looking so good. New York just beat you guys in a Game 5. And this series against London, I think, told quite a lot about New York in the sense, like, where they are in the different game modes, because up against you guys, they looked great in the hard points. They lost, well, the first search and the control, and then they just about won the final search, so you guys probably should have won. But they basically played the same series here against London, where they win both hard points, and this time they lose all the other maps. Once again, I think on a raid Game 5, actually, where London finally win a Game 5 for the first time, I believe, in 5 times of asking. So it was really interesting to see. Big W for London, certainly. Every 10 points they get here is absolutely massive. This is also really massive for New York in the sense that beating FaZe, that put them in a great spot to get out into winners bracket. Now it is far from clear that they'll be able to do that. So I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on this New York team, because of course they go in later in the week to beat a 3-0, well, a 3-0, sweaty, it wasn't really particularly sweaty for them because they got over the line pretty comfortably against Seattle, who of course then honestly went on to make a change that we will look at. So New York, I'm not really sure what I think so far. It seems like their game modes outside of hardpoint are a little bit suspect with Hydra, but I do have faith that they'll keep improving over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think their team play is still lacking, if that makes any sense. Because like in hardpoint, they can kind of freestyle and they don't have to work together so much. They're just kind of winning those battles just based off their talent. And in the S&D and control, they're kind of lacking. So you can kind of see the cracks. But they're still a new team. They're going to take a little bit while to develop. Hydra's been good in hardpoint, but he's been lacking in the other two. So I think they just have to get everyone on the same page for those two modes, and I think they're going to get a lot better. Obviously, losing to London is really not great, because now let's say they lose to Chicago and we close out and win our final two. They're looking at a 3rd seed, and if they lose against LAT, they're in losers. So by starting off really hot and then losing to London, and then possibly if they have a bad week this upcoming week, they're kind of putting themselves in a hole when they started out so well. So it's like the pressure came back on them really quickly for this next week.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, right? Like, they had such a great opportunity here to just have a nice 2-0 week. You're playing London, you're playing Surge. Let's get 2-0 out the way, go 3-0 in the group, and now you're super comfortable. No chance really of getting to losers at that point. Doesn't happen though. We'll have to talk about some of the potential permutations for Group B, especially at the end of the video, because there's one team that's actually locked into their place in Group A. That's Toronto Ultra. They're already guaranteed 1st seed in that group, which is honestly incredible. We'll get into that, but lots of things certainly up in the air, especially for this Subliners team, because you look at so many of these matchups in Group B and you're like, wow, they have a really tough time this week, and they play OpTic and Los Angeles Thieves, and clearly those are not two easy matchups by any means. Wanted to touch on Mac as well quickly on the New York Subliners because he had a monster final series against Surge. Haven't really seen a series like this from him in a while. Had like a 1.68 or something. And I know there's been some questions. I've just kind of been wondering the idea that, all right, well, Hookah's kind of sitting there, and we know there's existing relationships between Dallas and Clayster, or well, because of course Dallas and Clayster, but they did the Clayster trade, right, with Clay to New York. So clearly, it's to me, if I'm Hastro and I don't want to move forward with Hook, or maybe I do, but the team doesn't, and I want to trade him somewhere, and we'll get into that maybe in a second here when we talk about Florida, the rumors going around there, but seems to me that I don't necessarily want to trade him to. Obviously, Thieves aren't going to make a change anyway, it seems like right now. But the whole thing between Astro and the Thieves, like the Hoodie York stuff, like, and then there's an existing relationship with New York and, the team that's got over there. Like, if New York wanted to make a change, I don't think they do. But, I was thinking, all right, what if Hook for Mac? Like, what does that have a team? I mean, at the end of the day, it's Hook, right? Like, you've got to be considering these things if it's an option. But yeah, Mac comes out and smokes him right here. So fair play. It was great to see him have a great series. And Hydra against Seattle did basically nothing. I think he had the least kills in the lobby, and they still win pretty comfortably, which is a scary sign for the opposition.
Yeah, this team is kind of interesting because with Mac now back on the flex like he was in the preseason, he's a lot better. I always thought he wasn't like he just wasn't comfortable in the SMG. Everyone thinks because last year he ran the MP5, he's an SMG player, but in reality, I think he's a much better flex. When he slows down his pace and lets everyone kind of let the game play out in front of him, he's a lot better than having to make that first initial move. And with Asum kind of like being the entry man, and now Hydra kind of being like that roaming slayer. Mac is a lot like letting the game develop in front of him. He's able to slow it down and play very well. So it was nice to see him back on the AR and performing really really well. And Asum continuing to put up. I think he's a dark horse for the MVP. Honestly, with how well he's been playing. Even when he doesn't put up the best like KD numbers, he's still doing so much on the map, and he's a big reason for their victories. So it's a development period for them. They'll end up developing, but if they were to get Hook, it would be really interesting because I think Hook kind of fits into the role that Hydra's playing right now. So then you would have to question: do we put Hydra in the flex and take Mac out, or take Hydra out? So it will be interesting. Honestly, I don't think Hook's going anywhere personally. So while it would be nice, I don't know. I think New York's kind of staying put for a long term here.
Yeah, I imagine most teams right now are kind of like they've made their changes. They're here at stage 3. They want a couple of months to practice before champs, and they've kind of figured out what works. So I don't think they'll change. But if Hook's an option, it's tough to pass up these kind of situations. So let's talk about the team that they beat. That was Seattle Surge. Of course, speaking about Hook, there was like, oh, could Hook get into Seattle? Of course, given the timing that they're making their change, it's not really feasible, even if they could afford the buyer, even if they wanted to get him, even if he wanted to go there, even if they could come to the arrangement with Dallas, lots of question marks. They decide to make the change. And it's okay. So Loony comes out confirmed earlier today as we are recording. Decimate coming in from the challenger side. Pretty much one of the only SMGs left in challengers that was a realistic fit for teams like this. I mean, it makes sense. Decimate, Saints, Civ, these are the kind of names that are left over there. A lot of the guys that people wanted have already got snapped up, right? You've got Standy on Rokkr, you've got a Venom on Los Angeles Thieves, both of which doing very well now. So I do have to wonder with this change, I feel like in a way they had an unfortunate turn of events in that their stage 2 was promising to the point where they didn't feel like they needed a change. And then their stage 3 has started off so poorly that they're now like, all right, we have to make a change, but maybe it's too late to get. I mean, I don't know. Decimate's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I don't know what your thoughts are on this change because he comes in. I guess maybe he'll try and be. I wonder what they'll do really because I think Brustini is better on like a secondary SMG support role in like behind a main slaying sub. And maybe Decimate can do that. I don't know, but maybe it's not the perfect move. If they were to make this move a couple of months ago, they may have had some more options on the table, Austin.
Yeah, that's why I thought Vivid would be such a good fit because Vivid would be that entry, and then Prestini would be able to play behind him, kind of like how you saw Prestini in Black Ops 4, when you had a BZ. So that's when he was like really really well paced with the rest of the team. I thought that would have been a great fit, but Decimate, I think he's been one of the better SMGs in the Challenger scene. He had a really, really good season 2 for Elite, where he ended up with a 1.2 KD overall. This past season has still been pretty good, which is, it's kind of hard when Elite was kind of all over the place this season with the servers going down, but he was still doing pretty good. He had a 1.0 this stage. Still really, really good in S&D. He had a 1.2 in S&D. So I think it's a positive on the slaying aspect and on the firepower, but I'm interested to see who's going to be the play caller now, because it'll just be interesting to see how Gunless, Octane, and Prestini work together. Like, who's going to be that play caller, who's going to be calling the shots? Because as of right now, I honestly have no clue who it would be, and I think that's kind of like make or break for teams, whether when they reach that next echelon of like the next tier. So it might be hard for them to break through like the top 6. I feel like they're going to be kind of like right where like Minnesota is right now.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, that's the thing. We talked about this team. I mean, to be honest, every team that formed in the offseason, you were like, okay, they've got top 6 potential or whatever. But I don't know, we've kind of seen that at times from Surge, not really. I think I expect Gunless to step up into that kind of leadership role in a sense. I think he's been super vocal in their listenings that we've seen from him, which is great. And it almost felt at times when he went to the listenings, it's like, do they necessarily need Loony with Gunless being as vocal as he is already? So that's that was a question, and they decide, all right, the slang, we just need better, right? And I mean, let's be honest here. Coming into the season, what did everyone say about the Surge team, right? Like, the SMG line is just not going to cut it with the best teams in the game. And some of these organizations, man, we talked about it on the podcast about Los Angeles Thieves. The fact that they were awful, they made a change, they made another change, they kept switching it up because they have championship aspirations. They made a number of changes. They dropped Slash of all people to the bench to try and figure out a team that works. They've come out finally this week, really, and proven, wow, yeah, they are the real deal. They can beat OpTic. We'll talk about that in a few minutes here. But you've got Seattle Surge, who, as an organization, it's like, what are we doing? I mean, we come into the team with this season, which most people knew. I don't know. I feel like everyone pretty much knew maybe this isn't going to be the team at the end. It's probably not going to work out. But yet you still come into the season with it, and you leave it. You leave it quite a while to make the change. I mean, they're the last team to make a change out of the teams that aren't FaZe and OpTic, and now you're sitting here with a team that we're still looking at and saying, they might get better, but every other team is so good. Every other team's improving so much. Yeah, top 6, top 4, maybe on a good day, but probably still not too much better than that. So it's still interesting to me. I think it just shows to me, Austin, like a different caliber of organizations. Like we saw it with Seattle last season, the fact that they almost kind of gave up. I mean, I think Slackter was talking about it recently on the flag or something. The fact that they basically told him, unlucky, mate, we're not making any more changes. The pandemic's here. We don't have any money, which, fair enough. But, Thieves are out here. They're doing their best to try and win. Seattle, once again, one of these organizations, it's like, what are we doing? Maybe they'll prove us wrong and they'll start winning championships, but I just don't see it, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, last year they were over the cap, which is why they couldn't make any moves. And the ownership group of Seattle is actually like really wealthy. I think they're one of the biggest like organizations in Canada.
Yeah,
So
it's like overactive. Enthusiast gaming. Enthusiast
Yeah.
gaming, yeah. They're just going public on the stock market, I think I saw. They own like Luminosity as well, right?
And I think the family that owns them owns the Vancouver Canucks, and they're huge. They're worth so much money. So they have a ton of money. Probably they're up there in the league. But last year they were over the cap, and that's why they just couldn't make any moves, because there's kind of like a luxury tax when you get that high. This year it's like they kind of waited too long. I know Joey's their sub, not by choice, but by just what had to happen, I guess. So they didn't have somebody that they could sign as a sub, because in stage 1, if you're a GM, which I don't even know if they have a GM, but if you're the GM over there, like stage 1, you gotta assess your weaknesses, and it was pretty blatant that like their SMGs were like the weakness, and they could have been reactive in stage 1 when Standy and Venom were still there, and then stage 2 they kind of got hot, so it was kind of, let's kind of ride it out. And now it's kind of, they're at the point where Decimate is like the star SMG in the challenger scene in NA, and it's impossible to get any Europeans basically right now. So they just had to go with him. So it'll be, yeah, I still think he's an upgrade. it just comes down to the team communications and the leadership, which I think is a really interesting thing to look at for the next couple weeks because I honestly don't know how it will break down, but um, I think this team will definitely get better from where they are currently.
Yeah, I mean they've got the pieces there certainly. I mean the talent on this team is still like incredible. I mean I don't want to downplay that, but it's just there's a lot of talented teams in the league. And speaking of that, I mean just to mention quickly before we move on, the matches they play this upcoming Dallas home series. Their first match is in 4 days' time, 3 days' time for when you guys are listening to this probably. Versus you guys in FaZe, so they're going to need quite the honeymoon period, I think, to take down you boys. And then they play Ravens, and I would say right now Ravens are favourites in that series. So we'll have to see. I mean, not every team has a honeymoon, not every team goes off on the main stage, but it would be kind of interesting to look at, right, Austin, because you've got Octane always talking on the timeline about how much the honeymoon periods are important, and if they come out and have a good week or a bad week, either way, it's going to be something to discuss.
Yeah, it's definitely we've had a problem with honeymoon teams and new players. I think we lost to Neptune in the preseason, lost to Hydra, we lost, and then we played Desi. So I don't think we haven't played Standy yet, but yeah. So it should be an interesting matchup. It's always a little bit more difficult to prep for, but yeah, I mean, our match is going to be difficult for them. And then what was the second match they have?
They play Ravens,
So
so
that one,
on Sunday.
I still think that one's really difficult for them because they both are, the hard point teams that match up pretty well. And London's actually been pretty decent on the S&D side, so that one's even a really tough matchup for them as well. So it'll be I don't think it's a make or break week for them. Whether they go 0-2 or 2-0, they're going to go into the major and just try to reset from there, going into stage 4. So definitely not a high pressure week, I would say, for them.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I agree with your point you mentioned earlier about like decimate, search, and destroy, because that's really where, like, you look at a team like Los Angeles Guerrillas, and you kind of know that they're going to struggle in the respawns. I mean, you do know that. But in search, even last year as well, like, they can win a search against most teams, pretty much any team. And that always makes the series a bit scary when you're playing LAG. And if you want to be one of these lower tier teams that doesn't quite have the talent of the top dogs, but still win series and get points. There's a reason I think why LAG, I think they're in the 8th spot right now with like 80 points because they get the distance in a lot of these series. They win game fives, and some other teams need to look down that route. I think to try and be more search and destroy specialists because that's how you win these upset series and get over the line. I think Surge, if they can go down that route a little bit more, and Octane's been great in search this year. Gunners is a good search player. Pristini knows what he's doing, and Decimate's been great. So maybe they can tap into that, win a few more game fives, and we might see these guys rise up the ranks. But right now, they're second last in league standings, I think. 50 points. London have 40 points. So it's not like it's an unassailable gap. I mean, they're a few wins away from getting to the champ seeds, but a few wins are not so easy to come by when the matches are as competitive as they are. Let's talk about, well, along those lines, actually, let's discuss Florida because they played, I think they just played one match this past week up against Paris Legion. I thought, all right, I'll choose Awakening in my draft by fantasy team. He's going to absolutely smoke these guys, but doesn't happen at all. Paris come out and win the series 3-1. Bit of drama on the final map, right, with the restart. Maybe we can just touch on that first quickly with the non-restart because I think I thought it was like 170 to 110. I think it turned out it was like 150 to 105 or something when Neptune fully lagged out of the Moscow hardpoint. And then, well, the series is just, well, it's just over. And kind of interesting because they did this rule, like they added the rule last year, right? Where if one team's over 150 or if like the combined numbers is over a certain amount, then they don't replay it. And obviously there was a difference to the point where like what do you really do? So it was kind of a difficult call to make because if it was 100 to 100 I think they would have just replayed it, but I don't know what you think about this, Austin. I mean, I guess the rulebook said it's a win for Paris and they deserve the series victory, I think, but still a bit of a tough one.
It would be nice if we had a pause feature that would pause the game and allow the players to rejoin the lobby and then go from exactly where he lagged out, but unfortunately, we don't have that, and the rules is there for a reason. There needs to be some kind of line in the sand. It absolutely sucks that Florida lost that way because in Moscow, it's never really over
Mm,
when a team has 150 points. I think they were down by like 60, I think.
yeah.
So that's like one P2 and then like a successful P3 break, and then you're tie game. So it's like uh, It's I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to lose like that, to lose a series. Um, Especially because I know we've lagged out multiple times. So it's just horrible timing, horrible. And I mean, you can't really fault the league because they got to draw the line somewhere, and it just sucks for Florida to lose like that. You know?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like at the same time, I don't think you can be too annoyed if you're Florida because it's like at the end of the day, if you're going down 2-1 and a fair chunk and a half went to Paris Legion, it's like you're clearly not playing the Call of Duty you need to be playing. So there's you know you can't just throw that as an excuse. It's like, oh, we lost the series, stupid restart thing. There's got to be more to it, and it's it's strange, really, because Florida, like the other day when they beat Minnesota Rokkr, it was like, wow, Skies and Awakening just had monster series and they just beat anyone, which is possible. But when they don't, it's like, what are we doing here? I mean, Havoc doesn't have the greatest series here. Neptune, I mean, Neptune. I don't know. I want to say he's up and down, which he kind of is, but like, when's the last time you saw like a monster series from Neptune? He actually had a good one here, I think, despite the lag up, but the rest of his team kind of didn't. So it's like I need to see Neptune have like a big series, like a 1.2, and they win against a good team. That will prove that this team really has potential to me because right now, whenever they win, it's just Awakening usually dropping big numbers, and when he doesn't, then the team always just falls flat on their face. And see, I don't know what you guys think. What are you guys? Well, I don't know what you think Florida should do, Austin, because like at this point, it's like you make this change for Havoc. This is a series that you just cannot lose in any realm of possibility if you want to be a competitive team. I don't think, especially given how yeah how good their situation could have been in their group, Austin.
Yeah, they're in a really tough spot because I don't know. There's no clear-cut player to sub
Yeah.
back in to fix this, and I think Havoc's been really below his potential. I don't. I think he's been struggling since he got inputted back in. Neptune has been. I would say he's been pretty inconsistent. He's been up and down. He usually plays pretty well in the S&Ds, which is kind of shocking for a Halo player because usually the Halo players struggle in S&D and play pretty well in the respawn. But he's been up and down. I would say it's pretty fair to say. I almost think this team struggles with, pushing as a unit. Like instead of doing one-on-ones, do two-on-ones and pushing angles together. So I almost think they kind of struggle with that in the respawns, and it's kind of like more of like a loose fluid structure they have where they kind of just they take a lot of chals, they try to exert a lot of pressure on the map. So I just think they have to either change their play style to something that is more suitable for the how tournaments play. Because in practice you can get away with that fluid style where you're taking a lot of challenges, especially online. But in practice, teams really shore up. They don't take individual challenges as often. So it's just a completely different play style in the matches, which I really think is what is affecting them so hard because I mean we practice against them a lot. They show a lot of potential. I mean I think Hook's one of the top 5 player in the league. I think or Awakening, sorry. I think
We'll
Awakening's
get
the top
into
5 player
that.
in the league. I think he's just disgusting, especially on the flex where he can just do whatever he wants. And I don't know. It's just so weird. I don't know if Havoc's the right fourth piece for them. I don't know if maybe there was someone else they should change out. I just it's so weird because I don't know what they could even think of doing or what they are thinking. So it's a tough spot for them because at the end of the day, I really think they should be so much better than where they're at.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's also the question, the fact that we're going back to LAN for stage 4, stage 5 champs. We haven't really seen Awakening on LAN. We haven't seen like Neptune in a LAN environment. So it's not like they're going there expecting, like, the OpTic guys are going to LAN. They're expecting, right, we're going to absolutely crush all of these kids, which, there's teams you're expecting to get better, teams you're expecting to get worse. I'm not saying that these guys are going to flop on LAN or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go to the major, stage 4, and they don't necessarily play how they have been online. And that's just another spanner in the works, really, of a team that's having a tough time. And, well, as you said, Awakening, very much so, top 5 player in the game, caliber. There was a rumor that came out, has been discussed these last couple of days regarding Huki followed the CEO of the Mutineers. The CEO of Mutineers, Ben Spoon, followed him back. And I think Chrome was saying that there was at least some discussions going on behind the scenes regarding a potential buyout situation or a potential trade situation. Because, well, it's a tough one, right? But if you're Dallas and you're going to release Hook, which is obviously you don't really want to do that. But if there is a team you want to release Hook to, maybe Florida's a decent one because they're not necessarily going to be your like, caliber championship caliber contender right there with you every single event potentially. So you don't really want to give Hook to OpTic, for example, because that's just probably not going to end well for you. But to Florida, maybe it's okay. Now, if Hook wants to go there, I mean, I'm sure he wants to start on a team no matter what the situation is. So that's probably okay. But then you've got the Florida angle, where it's like, okay, are we just paying a ridiculous amount of cash, or is there some trade going on here? Because if you're Florida, in no world do I ever want to get rid of Awakening. But if Hook's there, and maybe I feel like I have to build something completely different around my team and maybe just start afresh or something, and then, I mean, maybe Dallas are there thinking, all right, well, if we could get Awakening in and drop Felo back to the bench, I mean, I don't know. People were bringing up the Awakening Hook trade. I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be a blockbuster one, Austin, if it did.
Yeah, I mean, even then, it would be Awakening plus a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like we're talking like $500,000. Like there's not many teams that are gonna spend. Like there's probably 2 teams that are gonna spend anywhere near that money, and I mean, I don't see it because like a lot of people are saying Hastro will just give them away. Hastro has a lot of people that are around him on the organization. Like last night, Zuma and Ben were talking about it. It's not just Hastro anymore. He has plenty of investors. He has a CEO of the company because he's not the CEO anymore. He's the chief of esports.
Mm.
So it's not just as simple as Hastro says, I'm going to give him away. I'm going to give him away because it's just, first off, we're in franchising, so that makes zero business sense. It makes zero competitive sense because if you do give him the Florida, what if Florida ends up beating you at champs or something? Like that's there's yeah. Like the thing with franchising is the players get there's a lot of positives for players. You have insane salaries, you have insane, like you have some comfortability, like you have guaranteed contracts, you have all that. But on the back end, it's like if you do get benched, you're probably on the bench for the rest of the season. So it's tough because like I would say like a Hook for Awakening trade would be sick for Dallas, but they would Florida would all have to pay a huge buyout, or and not only that, they would have to pay a big salary for Hook.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know. I don't see Florida spending that kind of money, and even if it was a huge discount, it's still a large sum of money. Um, and I just don't see Dallas like giving him away because if I'm Dallas, I still consider Florida like one piece away from being like one of those top teams like last year. Um, and I wouldn't be wanting to hand them the final puzzle piece that would make them better than us at the time. And then yeah, because let's say they just sold them to Florida and it was like Awakening, Skies, Hook, and Neptune.
You never know,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, I just Dallas, that would just not be a smart play on their part because they're struggling, and there's a world where they fall down, rankings, and what if Florida overtakes them in the standings, or I don't know. With franchising, it's a little bit more cynical minded with roster movements stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Exactly. I mean, it's just crazy to think the talent that's on the bench, right? I mean, hopefully we get some of the talent on the bench back onto the starting teams, but I don't know how many we're actually going to have, but there's certainly some opportunities there. So interesting. So Florida, okay, we kind of covered that in some good depth. Paris wanted to touch on briefly. I mean, they won their series against Florida. I believe they lost to Minnesota also earlier in the week. Yeah, they lost 3-1 to Minnesota. So but no, I mean, the victory against Florida was impressive, don't get me wrong. I mean, they finally had a decent series with Temp here. Do I think this is necessarily an uphill trajectory for them? I don't really know, but with Scraps Scraps back on the SMG, still putting up numbers. I think Classic, like, if Classic doesn't drop like a 0.7, then this team actually is in a good spot. And to be honest, it's Aqua as well, who, in a similar way to Skies, seems crazy inconsistent, but Aqua in stage one was like so good. And then he's had a couple of series lately where he's dropped like a 0.8, and then they just have nothing going for them at that point. But when I think he had like a 1.2 here again, and when he does, Paris are honestly a really scary team. So I don't know. This league's just super competitive, Austin.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with some of the lower teams is like you can't expect them to win every series they're in, but at least Paris is usually pretty competitive, which I think is a plus. Like
Mm.
if your bottom teams are still super competitive, I think that says a lot about the league and where we're at right now. Where Paris, who A lot of teams or a lot of people would put them maybe in the bottom 3. They're super dangerous in respawns, and if they get going, like they have a lot of veteran talent where they just start putting it together in the respawns and can take maps off any team. So I like the Paris team. I don't think they're going to win every match, but I think their matches are really fun to watch, and they play respawns pretty clean. So it yeah, I mean you win some, you lose some at the end of the day. It's just how it is, and I think they'll continue to be like right where they're at right now.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just a tough time for all of these teams trying to get to champs, right? Because you've got the top dogs, you've got your Torontos, your FaZe, your Dallas, I mean, I could actually probably bring it up on screen if I have it right here. Seems like I don't actually have it, but you basically got all the big dogs. You've got Toronto, Dallas, Rokkr, you've got Thieves, Subliners, Chicago, FaZe, and then seems like to me, probably those 7 teams are going to be top 7, make it to champs. And then there's basically all the other guys are fighting for one spot, which is not easy by any means. Let's talk FaZe then, given we just mentioned them. 2-0 week. You just about got over the line in some game 5s. I mean, the series against Los Angeles Thieves was actually a really good one. Thieves looking great. I mean, you guys managed to clutch up on Checkmate, Search and Destroy, which is kind of interesting, seeing that in the map pool finally for you guys. Obviously, it's an important thing to expand your map pool, especially when you expect to be getting to grand finals of majors. This is the kind of stuff you need to be good on a number of different maps. And maybe Tupac's come in and said, look, guys, we need to tone up our express, get on Checkmate. And that's what got you over the line in these series. And that's what I thought was impressive here. Because yes, both of these go game 5, even against London. Unexpected. I think you went down 2-1 in this series as well, because poor Zaptius actually went on a monster streak over towards the final point on Garrison. But yeah, 2 game 5 search victories. The interesting thing to me, Austin, before I hand it to you, is that it's kind of reminiscent of the FaZe from second half of last year, right? Where you do game 5 every series and still clutch up and get over the line. And I don't know, it's great that you're winning searches. That's a massive plus, because over time you'd expect the respawns to be less, well, more consistent, I suppose, than they are right now.
Yeah. So the tough thing is like every team goes through slumps, and every team goes through a learning curve. I mean, shit. I mean, we could go in the losers and lose to the next major, and at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything because we are plus 45 on Dallas right now and plus 80 on Toronto. So like people kind of forget, but these majors are basically just extended pool play for champs. Like they don't really mean anything at the end of the day. As long as we're in contention for the top 2 seed, I mean we're fine. And what a lot of people forget is like, are we the best team in the game right now? I don't know. We're still competing for championships. When we were the best team in the game, guess we're still competing for championships. So it's like, yes, we're losing, but if anything, we're kind of learning how to lose, which is really important for teams because when you lose a map, like because when we were on the winning streak, I'm not saying we didn't know how, but when you lose a map, it's kind of like that, like shock. Now we're kind of learning how to bounce back after series losses and map losses because it's kind of like a acquired skill to a point. So losing, it's we're learning a lot from it. It's not like we're taking these and just blowing them off. I mean, we have learned so much from every single map loss, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really care about being the best team in the middle of the season. Like no shot at Florida, but like Florida was the best team for a month and a half last year, and when they went to champs, they placed top 8. And like, so I don't really care about major 3, 4, 5. What I care about is like getting to the potential that our team has and like bringing that into champs. So I don't really care if we're in like perfect form right now because yeah, winning these majors is awesome. Getting these CDL points, sweet. But at the end of the day, champs is the end all be all. So it's all about that journey of like just learning throughout the season, learning how to like communicate properly because there's just so many aspects once you get to that higher tier. Learning how to honestly how to lose, how to expand your map pool, how to correctly rotate. So I honestly this is great for us because we're just learning. Pretty much that's all it is. So we're learning and we're still winning series and we're still kind of we're like half power right now. We could be way better. But I mean, at least our S&D is getting better because I know the hard point will eventually kind of just figure its way out. We know exactly what's wrong, and we're just slowly working on that in practice. So, I mean, it's all about the end of the year, so we're getting there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, at the end of the year, at the end of the day, in a few years' time, no one remembers who won Major 3. Everyone knows who won Champs in 2021, right? So that's, of course, what matters at the end of the day. I thought it was an interesting point you made, actually, about like, being able to go down 2-1 or go down 2-0 and actually have the fortitude to bounce back, because it's something that, I mean, you guys obviously hadn't got too much practice with, right? Early part of the season where you're just winning every single series. And speaking of a team at winning every single series, let's touch on Toronto Ultra. They go on this crazy map win streak, which finally got ended against the Minnesota Rokkr. I'm pretty sure they won 12 maps in a row, from 3 in a row versus you guys in the grand finals, or at least 2 in a row. I think maybe it was 3. And then they won then 3 series in a row, all 3 zeros. A couple of the maps are very close, especially against LAG. But they go on a 12 map win streak. Then they lose the first map to Minnesota Rokkr yesterday. They then win the next 3 maps to continue their streak to now 8 series wins in a row. 4 at the major, 4 now at the start here of stage 3. Unbelievable. I thought that after the major, it was like, wow, Toronto Ultra certainly top 2 team up there with you guys. But I thought, okay, maybe they'll come in here, they'll maybe go, 4-1, 3-2 in the groups or something, and maybe get upset a little bit. But they look like, by far and away right now, the most dominant team that we have seen in certainly in quite a while. Inside, I mean, honestly, you could talk about all these guys all day, right? Especially since Banter's got better. But I wanted to give a shout out to, well, Cammy first of all, because at the major he didn't really have to do too much because it was Banter and Clinics, but he's been back on absolutely top form. And this guy, Insight Man, he is such a good main AR in terms of the way he plays fundamentally. Like, the communication with his team seems phenomenal. His positioning is great. He makes plays on the map when he needs to. His search and destroy, especially, has been phenomenal. The situations he puts himself into clutch, like just the positioning he takes. The clutch he won against Minnesota Rokkr to finish off the game, like they threw that for sure, but it was incredibly well played. Like he put himself in the perfect spots. He didn't make any mistakes, and he gave himself the maximum possible percentage chance to win that round, which is what you need because occasionally the percentages go in your favor. So incredible. They start off 4-0. They are locked in as the #1 seed already in Group A, which is pretty remarkable to happen after just 2 weeks of action, Austin. 12-1 in map count. This is something pretty unprecedented, to be honest.
Yeah, they're a really solid team. I mean, I gotta hand it to Bance and Cammy because those guys were the ones that were kind of trying to find form in stage 1. Bance kind of reinvented himself during the major and just got so much better. And Cammy has really found his way as a flex and on the third SMG at times, and he's just been really solid. He's been hitting new levels since his sensitivity training. Not very sensitive in matches. He's dropping like 1.3s now, so I think this team's just incredibly well rounded. They're finding ways to win even when they start off badly, which is something that's really tough. As I said earlier, like they know how to lose a map and bounce back because they did have a rough stage 1 and they kind of had a rough beginning of stage 2, and they learned from each of these losses and got better. And now they're expanding their map pool, which is kind of scary. And it's kind of like when when will it end? But they're looking really good right now. Really, really, really solid.
I mean, they've got they want an 8-win streak, so if they win their next series that they play this week up against the Paris Legion of all teams, so they beat Paris, they'll be on a 9. Then they go into the major, and I mean, if they win the major and they don't lose a series, that'll be a 12 series win streak. Just speculating, but and that'll break your guys' record, right? Because it was 11, I think you guys started.
I think it was
off
11.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's on the cards, right? Who knows? I mean, Toronto Ultra will probably come into this major as favourites if they do beat Paris. I mean, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I'm just looking at the standings in Group A. In terms of map count, you've got Toronto at 12-1. Then all the other teams are either even or negative in terms of map count. Dallas is 6-6. Guerrillas are 5-6. 5-7 for Rokkr. 4-7 for Mutineers. 5-10 for Paris Legion. So Toronto just dominating that group, which is surprising. And well, another team in that group. Let's talk about Minnesota Rokkr. They take a map off Toronto. Fair play. I mean, beating them in a map is no mean feat, it seems, at the present time. And they took down Paris pretty comfortably as well. But Interestingly for me, for the Rokkr, because we saw in stage 2 when they first added Standy, they beat all these top teams, and we were like, wow, these guys are dominant force. They're going to come into the major and do great things, and they did right at the major. They went pretty much all the way, lost to Ultra in the end, it down in the loser side. It feels to me that they've somewhat dropped off the pace somewhat from their real top form when they first added Standy. I don't know if you kind of feel like they're, kind of slotting into a more expected kind of level for this team, because it seems to me maybe the honeymoon is over for the Rokkr. There's still a solid squad. They can still beat probably anyone in a game 5, or if not earlier than that. But they're not quite looking like the maybe championship contenders they were when this team initially formed in the first couple of series that they played.
Yeah, I think it's kind of concerning that I think they're 1 and 2 in S&D this stage, which was their strength going into the stage. I would say. That's kind of concerning. The only S&D win they have is versus Paris, and Paris is a weaker S&D team. They're probably one of the weakest in the league currently. So yeah, they won at 6-2 on Miami. But other than that, I mean, they've gotten like, I feel like Standy's been pretty consistent, but the other three, it's been really inconsistent. Priesta put up first 2 matches were very good for him. The last match he put up a 0.82 versus Toronto. So he's 2 great matches, 1 bad one, and then Lamar had a bad one versus Toronto, and then he had a good one the series before. Dylan, it's like the same thing. So it's like, when are they all gonna put it together? When are they all 4 of them gonna be firing on all systems go, like they were when they played what was it, Dallas and Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think they're just, I would say, a slump maybe for them. They've only 2 losses, but I think it's a little bit of a bump in the road. Not overly concerning as long as they rebound on their S&D. I feel like they'll pick it back up where they were. But yeah, I guess S&D is just what you want to watch for this next week. Like where their S&D at is that, because I think that's a good gauge for them as a team.
Yeah, I agree. And they have 2 great matches to test that, right? Because they play Guerrillas on the Thursday, which is, if they can win 1, 2 S&Ds in that series, that says a lot, because Guerrillas are always going to be solid in that mode. And then they play Dallas on the Sunday. And Dallas is always a team, they've got game 5 every time. Sometimes they've got over the line, sometimes they haven't. Well, that's certainly something to keep your eyes on this upcoming week. Let's touch on LAG real quick as well. They go 0-2 this week, but it was kind of close, right? Their series versus Toronto was closer than the 3-0, well, it says on paper, and then they lose to Dallas in a 3-2. So I don't know. I guess it's expected, but yeah, I don't know. This team, I'm just not really sure, man. I mean, Chino had a couple of good maps here and there once again, but as I say, it's just one of those teams where they can definitely win some searches, but even here, they get Dallas all the way to a game 5. That's kind of where you want to get these top teams. And you don't manage to close out. Felo has a massive map. Actually, we'll talk about in a second, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, for LAG, you got to look from within their organization. What's their goal? It's going to be to probably get the eighth seed for champs. And in reality, Toronto, Dallas are higher than them right now. So losses to them, not the end of the world. Taking Dallas to a map 5, great, actually. I would say that's a big stepping stone for them. And even in the Toronto series, they should have won those first 2 maps. So I
Oh my
think those
God,
are
Apocalypse, man.
Oh,
Oh
they
my
threw
God.
both of them. So
Yeah.
I think this week is something to build off of. I think it's a positive. I would be disappointed if I was them if I ever lost to somebody that's below them in the standings right now. I think that's what really matters.
Mm.
And for them, for like their optics right now. So I don't know who they play this week. They
I
play
can tell you,
Minnesota.
they play Minnesota and they play Florida on the Saturday.
Okay.
So, winnable series for sure.
Definitely, definitely. So I mean, I would say Florida is kind of a must-win. Currently, I think they're plus 10 points, so they have to win that to stay above them for the 8th seed. And Minnesota is a seed above them and 7. So in Minnesota, again, hasn't looked that strong in S&D, so very winnable. I think they just, as long as they're not getting smoked in series, great. They just have to look competitive and give themselves a chance to take it to map 5 and win those S&Ds. So overall, I mean, 0-2, obviously not what you want to have, but very competitive, very close. So I mean, it's still a good week for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's promising, man, for them certainly, given the I guess the flack they got for the change. Maybe it'll work out for them
Mhm.
in
Way better
time.
than I
They,
thought they
of
would be.
course. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. There. I'm surprised they're as competitive as they are, to be honest. But it's great to see. I mean, every team right now is turning up. We talked about London last week being like I'd kind of lost all hope, but apparently they're turning up as well. So it's just great to see. Another team which managed to finally find their way a series was the Dallas Empire, right? Their first series with Felo into the team. And up and down once again. I mean, Felo, probably one of the more inconsistent players you're going to find in COD history. Super streaky player. Sometimes he goes off, sometimes he certainly doesn't. This time they required him to go big on a game 5. He did. They beat LAG, and finally a series win for them. Interestingly to me that they decided to go for this raid control pick where LAG are so good. They get smoked on it, which is pretty rare to see for Dallas, getting absolutely destroyed on raid control. And I wanted to touch before I throw it to you on Shotzi because he had a monster series, and this is incredibly impressive because now with Hook out of the team, you need Shotzi especially to start having absolutely incredible series, and he has been looking lights out. I don't necessarily think enough people are talking about him, maybe because Dallas haven't really they haven't really played like the big top dogs as of yet because of the group they're in. But when they do get the chance at the major to play against some of these big teams, if Shotzi can have some great series again, I think that's going to be a major driving factor for them because it was really this time last season he started to come into his own. We're kind of seeing it again here, and obviously Dallas are already scary, but if Shotzi's playing well, then they're even scarier than they already were.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of champs again, they're the second seed, and they have a 40-point buffer on Toronto right now. So at the end of the day, it's kind of figuring out what roster you want for champs because you're pretty much locked into champs already. You're not going to fall that far. Um, I think what they need to do is determine is Felo the guy for the roster. If that's a yes, you need to learn how to develop and stay stable for the rest of the season. If you need other moves, I mean this is what this stage pretty much is for them. Is just a learning curve to see what their next move is. Do they stay the same? Do they continue growing? Do they change? So it was a little concerning to see them go map 5 versus LAG, but when you look at it, Express S&D, I think LAG is one of the best Express S&D teams. Like I studied them a lot. I like the way they play that map. So again, not that worried if I'm Dallas. Raid control, as you just said, that's their only control they're good at. If anything, I bet you Dallas was trying to play them to see where their raid control is at because when you butt heads against someone that is really good, you kind of can gauge where you are at yourself. So again, I don't think that's that much of a red flag for Dallas. They won both the hard points and they closed it out on a raid where Felo just looked absolutely amazing. So I think that's fine. Fine week for Dallas. I think this next week's pretty big for them because they play Minnesota and they play Florida. So I mean, I think they're tough matches. If they pull it out, then that's definitely a bright light for them as they go into the next stage because I think they're probably going to be fighting for the second seed here. So they'll definitely need at least one win this next week over probably Minnesota, I would say, to edge out in that tiebreaker. So tough week for them, but I think they're coming in on kind of a high. Some good positives around them.
Yeah, I think they should only keep improving, man. And I mean, Illy, I'm a big fan of Illy and his play style and what he brings to a team. And I expect him to keep getting better and more comfortable in that SMG role. And I think like their SMG line actually could be really good here. So if this is the team they want to go forward with, they're always going to be scary because the names they have on that squad. And let's talk about the final series of last weekend then, because the final series of this coming weekend is Empire Rokkr, because the Empire Home Series, that is the marquee match. That's the big one we just discussed. We'll talk about some of the other bigger matchups for this coming week in just a few minutes. But the final match of this past weekend was OpTic Chicago versus Los Angeles Thieves. Really interesting one. It was OpTic's only game of the week. Not a must win for either team, but very much so an interesting view into where these teams are sitting right now. Because Los Angeles Thieves, I mean, that they big dick it, to be fair. They decided to play OpTic on checkmate hardpoint, and they come up with a win. They break OpTic's win streak on the map. I think OpTic was 6-0 on it before now. It looked like OpTic were going to make this crazy comeback, right, where you hold P1 to get the rotation to P2. But Thieves break in. They win map 1. Game 2, Chicago bounced back, I'm pretty sure. In the Search and Destroy, yeah, they did. And then Thieves, I mean, that they win the next 2 maps. And honestly, the final Apocalypse hardpoint was pretty comfortable. It was Kenny absolutely going off on the main stage. Venom, incredibly impactful. TJ had his moments as well. Drazza looks really solid. I mean, all of a sudden, Thieves are looking like genuine potential championship contenders here. And I mean, Chicago, there's many storylines with this series. We can get into the whole meta stuff in a second, but Formal does not have a great series by any means. And that's the thing, right? You're looking at this series, you're thinking, I mean, Formal always used to say how he was, Slasher's counter effectively. Now Slasher is in here, you've got Kenny instead, and it's actually Kenny putting Formal in the blender. So, really interesting series for me to watch at the very least.
Yeah, I think Ellie did pretty good with the map set. Obviously, there's a lot that goes in the vetoes, so I won't like grade their vetoes. But I think LAT came in with a very good map set for them because one thing I don't really like about the broadcast that we see sometimes is they include numbers and stats from like stage 1 and stage 2 when they're talking about stage 3. So yes, OpTic was undefeated on Checkmate Hardpoint, but they haven't played it in like many weeks, and
Sure.
I think LAT is one of the best Checkmate Hardpoint teams currently. And I know that team loves Checkmate. That's Checkmate all around. They just love it, which is why I believe we got Checkmate Hardpoint and Control out in our series. But and on the other hand, I think they're a really good Apocalypse team. Whenever we practice against them, they stand pretty tall on that map. So when I saw those 2 hardpoints coming in, I was like, oof, that's kind of tough. Because raid control is kind of like a neutral control. I think any team can kind of win that, whoever's hot on the day. So I saw LAT with 2 kind of good hardpoint maps for them. I thought it was a little bit of a trouble. I didn't think it was going to break as much as what we saw. But Kenny was just on another level. 1.3 for the series. He had 83 kills, which is highest in the lobby by 9, I believe, or 6 over Dashy. So he performed. He carried the team, especially in that hard points. He had a 1.5 in hard points. So this is what the team's going to need to continue to play well in the majors. They're going to need Kenny to really step up because have we seen great, huge star power out of the other 3? I mean, I wouldn't say we necessarily have yet, but they've played pretty consistent. So you see them reach that another level when Kenny's just going off. So as long as the other 3 can stay consistent, which I will give props to TJ and Venom, they've played pretty consistently on those SMGs after they kind of had a rough start. I think this team is, they're dangerous. They're definitely dangerous. And as for OpTic, I mean, I just think you just gotta find your respawns because they're against the top 7 teams. They're 3-11 in respawns.
Wow.
In their last 14. So I think that is like a huge red flag. So yes, they got their S&D back to kind of like a respectable level right now. They're probably top 3 in the game in S&D. They're looking really solid, but their respawns have just really taken a hit. I mean, they went 0-3 this past series, so they have to find a way to regain form there because I don't know what necessarily is going wrong. It's definitely something they're going to have to figure out pretty quickly so they can kind of rebound because when you look at them in terms of the points for the season, they're tied for 5th right now. Them in New York are 4 and 5 with 160. LA is at 140 and Minnesota's at 120. So they don't have a huge buffer from 4th to 7th. So they don't have like the Dallas effect where Dallas has such a big buffer that they can kind of play around with things. So it's going to be interesting how quickly they could rebound going into, the major and next stage.
Yeah, those are some great points about their respawn. I did not realize it was that bad. But yeah, when you look back, I mean, losing 3 respawns to Thieves is basically unacceptable. Like, I mean, you're not always going to win the searches. I mean, you've got to find your way across the line and at least a respawn. There's been a lot of people talking. I mean, we can just touch on the meta real quick because Dashi, of course, pulls out the FFA. I thought that was awesome to see. I mean, it's such great to see different weapons being pulled out, and some players have preferences for some weapons. And I saw Dashi pulled it out the first couple of rounds of the controller. They put it away because all right, it's not working on this one. I was definitely working on the Express though. Maybe we'll see other teams give it a go. Some of the other players who like to experiment with this stuff. But we also saw Envoy use the Milano, and he's talked about the fact that the headshot multiplier is pretty high, and on a map like Raids, beaming people off head glitches is something that you can do. But I've seen a lot of discussion from the Reddit experts, you know how it is, on like the routes that Envoy decides to take, right? A lot of the times he's not having the craziest of engagements. He's playing for flanks a lot of the time, trying to make smarter plays as opposed to just going in headfirst and taking gunfights. And maybe that's something which you could think about if you're the OpTic team, right? Because maybe you're looking at this squad and you're thinking, all right, maybe Envoy's still playing it as if it's 5v5 in a sense, playing a little bit more, like he doesn't necessarily have to get all the kills. But a lot of the teams, they've kind of got like the main SMG Slayer who's super fast and aggro, and Scump isn't necessarily always been that guy. So it's kind of interesting to see, especially with Envoy with the Milano in hand. It seems like a lot of the time to me that he's he likes to go for flanks. He likes to make these plays on the map, but I don't know if it's necessarily always the right play, and I don't think you see too many other SMG duos in that boat. And with Dashi and Formal especially, like they've been pretty damn good in their respawns as of late, especially Formula, despite the off series here. And to hear the fact that they're 3-11 just makes me think that it maybe is something in the SMG line that needs to be switched up here. Not in terms of players, but just in terms of
Yeah,
playstyle.
I will say this. In the 4v4 game that we currently in, a lot of the times you want as many 2-on-1 gunfights, like team shots, as you can possibly get. That's something we're really striving for, kind of learning how to adapt our playstyle to really help each other out more in these gunfights. When Envoy's flanking a lot, obviously that means there's only 3 people hitting from the front or hitting together. So you don't have as many 2-on-1 gunfights. So those flanks really have to be worth it. They really have to be paying off. And currently, right now, let's say like you are a flank heavy team and one of your players isn't playing as hot. And in this case, I just think Formal's having like a bad series here or there. Scump sometimes has a bad day here and there. So it's not the end of the world. But when the play style they have and they have one of those players have a bad day, that means you have one guy on a flank and then 3 guys hitting from the front or hitting together. And if one of those guys is having an off day, you're unfavorable in a lot of those engagements, a lot of those fights. And then a lot of people are catching Envoy on these flanks, so his flanks aren't paying off as much as they were in the past. Which I just think it's just a small team issue with how they're, looking at the game. I'm sure they are trying to find better ways to work as a unit on the map. So I'm really not worried about Chicago. Sender has been putting in a lot of work. I think he's really smart. He sees a lot of the issues they have. So at the end of the day, as I said, for us, I mean, it's not about winning stage 3. It really isn't. And it's not about winning stage 4. It's about getting yourself to where you want to be for champs. So if they're learning from these losses and learning that their playstyle needs to change at stage 3, I think that's a W for them, because then they can adapt in stage 4 and 5 and then bring that in the champs. So at the end of the day, I mean, look, you don't want to look bad at any point. You don't want to be slumping at any point. But if you're going to slump, might as well be now, because you have plenty of time to get better. So
It is the perfect time in the season to
yeah,
have a bit of a tough time. So yeah,
definitely
I mean, it's this group B's crazy. I mean, this week
insane.
they just played Thieves. They play on Thursday, New York. That is far from easy, especially because it's not like any of these matches for any of the teams are like, oh, it doesn't matter so much. It's not like OpTic have a game where they're playing someone who is either already locked up or they're already out. So it's like, it doesn't matter so much. Every team has to fight tooth and nail to the death in these series to try and qualify for winners. So just to break it down real quick, how especially the Group B looks, because Group A is also interesting. Dallas are 2-1. Toronto is pretty much guaranteed. So you're thinking Empire wins a series and gets to winners, and then there's one other spot there available. Maybe Rokkr should be favorites to get that one, but obviously things can change. But Group B, so Ravens and Surge pretty much out of it. But then you've got 4 teams that are competing for 3 spots. Thieves are 3-1 right now. So they're looking really good to make it to winners. Then you've got New York, Chicago, and FaZe. All there, 2-1, all of those teams. So I don't know if you've looked into the permutations here, Austin, to figure out what could happen, because I'm sure there's a lot that could happen. But given we touched on OpTic, I'll just run through OpTic's series that they play. So they play New York on the Thursday, then they play, of course, you guys, FaZe on Sunday. So that's what we said, right? They had the easiest start, and I mean, they've got to win one of these series, right? They've got to beat someone. If they beat New York, then it's a little bit interesting, because then New York play Thieves on Saturday. So New York, if they lose both of those, then basically if any team goes 0-2, they'll be in losers, right? I guess that's just how it works. But I don't know. It's gonna be crazy.
I'm pretty sure if we lose to Seattle, we're probably in losers. I feel like
Wow.
pretty sure we could still finish in last, which is crazy to hear. If we lose to both teams, I'm pretty sure because like Seattle was on the tiebreaker if Seattle beat
Yeah.
London as well. I'm pretty sure we could still finish. Actually, no. Worst, we could finish as fifth. That's a
You'd be
positive.
above London still?
Yeah, we'd be above London. So
Okay.
nice, nice. So that's a positive. But LA, if they win against New York, guaranteed top 2 seed. That's a positive for them because technically we could still win out and win the tiebreaker, so we would be first, they would be second. OpTic in New York, I think that is a very crucial series because that has the tiebreaker.
Absolutely huge.
And what a lot of people aren't thinking about right now is if let's say OpTic beats New York and we beat and we lose to Seattle but beat Chicago, we would all be 3-2. So these map counts are actually
Yeah.
huge. So like
Mm.
whoever for instance, when we play Chicago, it has to be clean. Like it has to be a 3-0, 3-1. So if we do have a tiebreaker because we 3-2'd New York, I believe. No, we 2-3'd.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we need clean matches, and I think that's what every team should be striving for: is winning and winning clean. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that would be interesting, right? It
yeah,
like also depends how you choose your map set as well. Like you're going into the vetoes, you're thinking, all right, well, hang on a second. We need a 3-0 here. We need a 3-1. We got to choose maps that we can win on
yeah.
early. I don't know. It changes the whole strategy
It
going in.
it goes to back to that like Team A and Team B discussion. So it I don't know if you're gonna see as many maps where you're taking risks. I think you're gonna see a lot of maps that teams are comfortable with, even if both teams are. Like I feel like for New York versus Chicago, I feel like you're going to see a checkmate hardpoint, checkmate control, checkmate S&D. You're going to see the maps where both of them are comfortable on and kind of square up on. So it's going to be really, really close.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure the way the tiebreakers work, so if there was like a 3-2 tiebreaker between all the teams, it goes to head-to-head map count between the
Mhm.
three teams, right? So then whoever like has the most map wins and least losses in their series against the other two teams, then they come out on
Mhm.
top, which is it did happen earlier this season, right? So it was stage 2, right, with the whole craziness in losers with OpTic
Yeah.
managing to make it through. So yeah, unbelievable. I guess just to finish off, we could talk about which series you have your eyes on, because I mean, obviously, FaZe and OpTic is a big one for me. I don't know if there's any other ones that I'm really. I mean, honestly, all Group
Both
B is absolute
Chicago.
insanity, right? Yeah, I think like all the
Both the
games.
Chicago's and both of ours.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Honestly, the LA versus New York.
I was gonna say that one.
Yeah, that's a quick way because if New York loses that, then they're in a must-win versus Chicago. Actually, no, 'cause they play Chicago on Thursday. Oh,
Mm.
holy cow! Yeah, so if New York loses that, if New York loses versus Chicago, they're going in. LA's fighting for a first seed. New York's fighting just to make it into winners. So that one's probably the matchup of the week, besides us versus Chicago, I would say.
Yeah, agreed. And then we got Dallas, Rokkr final series of the weekend. That like always goes game 5. So there's definitely something in that. But yeah, so much to talk about. I think just the final thing that I had noted down we can discuss right at the very end is around the kind of discussion about LAN and returning for stage 4. I've seen that the OpTic guys, I mean, it was also in the OpTic pre-show, and Scump was saying how, he can't wait to get back, and HECZ was also saying unlikely to see fans until for those two events, maybe for the World Championship as well, if you guys listening aren't haven't caught up on that type of stuff as of yet. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Austin? Do you think we get fans for the World Championship? And I guess it depends on the state they go to, but at the same time, it's on the CDL Activision to be like, is this the best look if we do this? I'm sure they were thinking about PR type
Yeah.
stuff as well. So, and do you think teams get significantly better? Because what I'm interested to see, right, is because OpTic have been talking for months about how as soon as it's LAN, they're going to be destroying everyone. If they go to LAN, it doesn't happen. I mean, there's a video in that.
Look, I think certain players will get better, but I don't think anyone should be waiting for LAN and like have that be
Hmm.
their savior. I think there will be teams that get better. Like honestly, I think our team last season was way better on LAN than online, and obviously 3/4 of our team won the world championship the last LAN season,
Sure.
and the other guy put up 50, in a winners bracket match versus arguably the second best team in the 100 Thieves. Cell dropped 52 on a loss. So like
Oh
both,
wow.
yeah. A lot of people forget that on Hacienda Hardpoint versus LA
Yeah, I
Thieves when
don't
they
remember
did
that
the
one.
reverse sweep.
Crazy.
Yeah, he put up I think like 127 kills, and like that was a freak
Jesus
on
Christ.
land. So all
Hassie
four of our
Arvo, man, what a
players,
map.
yeah, all four of our players love land. So, but I think they're if anything, it's more of a test for rookies. There's a lot of rookies in the league that haven't been on land. From everyone from Awakening to Paulax to I mean, there's so many on there. Mac, I don't think has ever played a professional. Hydra,
Yeah, not
I mean, they played
professional, man.
amateur lands, but
Yeah.
not in the league. So high pressure because when you're face to face with somebody, it's just that much more pressure. On the fan side, honestly, I don't in the United States, I don't think there should be fans this season. I know it's tough to hear, but I just think is it really worth the risk? No. Um, just how I view it, I guess. I don't know how the league views it. I'm not gonna guess how they view it. That's up to them whether they want to take that risk or not. Uh, Obviously, I think when the league came out, they said lands is in plural. I don't want to play dumb or anything, but that obviously means it's either coming back for stage 4 or 5. I don't know which one honestly, but
Exit stage 4, like in the pre-show.
if it's
Pretty much.
yeah, I don't honestly I don't know anymore. I don't sit in on anything, so if when it does come back, it's gonna be sweet because I think it would be the first. I don't think there's ever been any lands in NA for a minute now.
Yeah.
Everything's in Iceland, so whenever it does come back, it's gonna be fucking sweet. I'm so excited just to watch LAN again because like Call of Duty, I feel like is always better on LAN. So when it does come back, I'm so excited. Definitely want to see some of these like tops because like even Champs is top 8, I think. So like honestly, every matchup's gonna be so amazing. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm just really intrigued to see, like, because everyone on the timeline when LAN was first announced, and even I'm sure when it's about to be coming about, was like, oh my God, I'm going to be an absolute demon on LAN again, right? And it's like, right, not everyone can be a demon on LAN, or if you are all demons on LAN, you'll counter each other out, right, by
It's
being
like when
better.
a new game comes out and everyone's like, "This is my year."
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll have to see. It'll work for some people, it won't work for others, and it's going to be great to watch. But thanks for joining me again, Austin. I think banging episode today,
Yeah.
and so much going on all the time. Roster moves, I'm sure, still in discussion behind the scenes as we speak, more than likely. And yeah, great matchup upcoming here with the Dallas home series. But yeah, thanks for joining me. Thanks all for listening and watching at home. Drop us a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, rating on the video, and we will see you here once again this time next week. Thanks for watching as always. Take care, and we will see you next time.